Hello, I'm Elise, and this is my presentation for my senior project. It's called Drawing from Within, Neurographic Art and Interoceptive Awareness, a Case Study. My project was very heavily influenced by the fact that my father had a massive stroke about a month into this program at CIIS. Um, his stroke left him unable to care for himself, and he needed to be on 24-hour care. I became the person overnight who was handling managing all of his caregiver staff, managing all of his household bills, managing when he moved into a care home. And I was very quickly sort of thrown into the level of stress that can happen. And it immediately made me think about the people who have less resources than we did and who could not afford to put their parent in a home that would care for them or pay for people to take care of them. Um, it's an incredible amount of stress for someone who's a little more removed from it. And it has made me think a lot about the people who are living with someone who's in their family, people who aren't getting paid for that work, but who are performing a very high level of care and necessary care. Um, as the boomer generation ages, this is becoming more and more of an issue for families. Also, as expenses go up, less people are able to afford the kind of care that they need. So more and more falls onto unpaid care from family. I wanted to find out how people who are in that position can help relieve their own stress. Many people, not just caregivers, may have had experience, especially people that are parents, um, with what happens to you when you are caregiving, and it's often that you have to become out of touch with your own needs. So things like being hungry, being tired, feeling irritated, not wanting to do something, having to go to the bathroom, all these inner body, these things that we sense, they often have to be put to the side because there is someone who needs care who takes the priority. So what I wanted to look at was, is there a free to low cost intervention that can help caregivers get back in touch with their own needs? I decided to try the intervention of neurographic art. Neurographic art is something that I was introduced to about a year or two ago, and I found it to be really enjoyable because it takes no real skill level. It's basically sort of doodling, and you don't need any special materials. So a piece of paper, a pencil is really all you need. If you want to be fancy, you can use a marker. And what I want to invite you, the watcher, the listener of this, to do is join me in doing some neurographic art. So I'm going to tell you about the study and how it went, but first I want to introduce you to what neurographic art is. So the first thing you're going to do, I'd like you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil. You can grab a pen if you want. For what I did here, I used a Sharpie and I used a piece of watercolor paper. You don't have to get that fancy. But what I did is I just made some swooping lines. Definitely don't copy mine, but I just want you to draw some lines on the paper, make them curvy. They can run into each other. If you want, you can kind of take note of how your body is feeling before you do this or as you do this. But we're just making some lines. That's it. Curving lines, letting them go across the page, letting them intersect wherever they want. And we're doing this for about a minute or so. I find that it's best not to overdo it. Stop before things get really tangled and messy, like a plate of spaghetti. And then I'm going to go on to the next slide here. Our next step is going to be smoothing the corners. So I have my Sharpie there kind of on the left to show you that I smoothed the edges here. I did a little rounding. Wherever there's a sharp corner like you see on the right, I did some rounding to just smooth it over. So I'd like you to just kind of go through your picture and do some smoothing as I talk. So for my intervention, I wanted to find unpaid caregivers, and my focus was people that are taking care of elderly family members 65 and over. The reason for that is because I think it's a different level of stress or a different type of stress than caregiving for a child or a young person. There is something added about living with or caring for someone who is more near the end of their life. And I think that there's something that is especially challenging about watching someone um, sort of go backwards. You know, we're used to watching babies or children where they're gaining new independence with every step that they take. Everything they do is growth towards something, towards a future. But with an older person, what you are watching is a decline. So that can be its own challenge for a caregiver. So I did my recruitment. Unfortunately, something I realized as I was going was that people that are caregivers have no extra time on their hands. So recruitment did not go as well as I wanted it to. I did hear from a few people, but not everyone qualified. I did have one woman who qualified, and I did the intervention with her and then decided to just make this a case study. She is someone who lives with her husband, who is 73. He had a right hemisphere stroke, so affecting his left side. And even though he's able to move on his own, he can't make very good decisions, can't do any planning for his life, and needs assistance with pretty much everything. So she's been caregiving for him for about 5 years. They live together. She's someone who was very eager and interested in trying this. I was delighted to have found her. We had a really good half-hour interview to lead in with. And then what I asked her to do was a 2-week intervention where 2 to 3 times a week, she would do a body scan and then do this neurographic art intervention. And I'm just going to move on to my next slide here so you can see what my picture looked like when I completed it. So you can thicken the lines as you see here. You can add on if you'd like. If you get to the end and you want to, you can add color. It's really anything you want to do. Anyway, so it was a 2 to 3 interventions a week, and I told her, let's, we'll do our follow-up interview in a couple weeks when you finish. And that was it. I let her go and do her own thing. When we did our post interview, it was really interesting to talk to her because right away she said, I can tell you that this therapy worked for me. Um, she had had a very interesting couple of weeks where shortly after her intervention started, her husband started having very dramatic, severe, painful symptoms that they couldn't figure out. So there was a lot of doctor's appointments. There was a lot of having a sick person at home. He was having a lot of stomach issues. And then about 3 or 4 days before I talked to her, he had had to have emergency surgery. It turned out his bowel had been twisted. So when I spoke with her, she had just gotten back from the hospital with him. He had been in the hospital for about 5 days. And what she wanted to tell me was that the day before, when she had come home by herself, she had had a very long day at the hospital. She was supposed to go out and do something with a group of people that she'd already committed to. And she decided, I think I'm going to try the neurographic art intervention instead. And so she sat down, she did her body scan, she did the art, and she checked in with herself afterwards and realized, I don't want to go to this social thing. I want to keep taking care of myself. So she ended up canceling and going and doing some gardening on her own. I just found that to be very moving because it was exactly what I had intended with this intervention, which was I wanted caregivers to be able to check in with themselves and see what their needs were. Interoceptive awareness. That was what I hoped would come out of it. And she was thrilled and she said, I'm definitely adding this to my toolkit. So that was just really, really exciting. I had a wonderful time talking to her. I was so happy that she had it had been such a good experience for her. In fact, she said that she's in the Big Sisters, Little Sisters program, and was getting a new and had a new little sister that she had just started working with. And she said she really likes art, so I'm going to introduce this to her too. So it was just very moving for me to feel like this is affecting more people, you know. So there are a few things, of course, I wish I had gotten more participants. A case study is lovely, but I think that this is something where it would be really interesting to have more people try it, to be able to have a longer intervention and and see how it is for more people. Something where we're looking further on, checking back in a month or two later to see has this made a longer term difference. These are the things I was not able to do in such a short senior project, but overall, I feel like the project went really well. I'm excited to have done it. And yeah, I hope your art practice was enjoyable. If you're interested, you can Google neurographic art tutorials online. There's plenty of them. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.